Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarastva Andhakaro Vai Rukarastva Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namashri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So in the last class 2 weeks ago, we had covered up to the end of the 11th chapter of Pancadasi, and so I think since we've had some break, it might be good to just review where we are and how, what are the concepts. And I think one of the things we have been following in this way of taking up this text is that I am just summarizing the main concepts in each of these chapters and not really going each verse by verse. I forget what, but I think in chapter 11 there must be close to 140 verses, and so I think we took only a fraction of those, and I think this is the way I'm going to continue to do that in the limited time that we have. And this text is easily available for study, and so if you want to completely do it in a very detailed fashion, it's up to you. You can certainly do that. But in this class, we will go over just the main concepts and why important they are and how they are important, not only what they are, but the whys of it. So we will cover that. So as you know, if you just go back to the entire book, text called Pancadasi, which means a book of 15 chapters. Panchadasha means 15, so Pancadasi means the one that has 15 chapters. So that is the name of the book. So in that book, as you know, this is just a revision, I'm sure that we have talked about it this before, that it is arranged in 3 main segments that are characteristic of each one of us. Okay, and you can guess what that is. So it is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So the first 5 chapters focus in on, not exclusively, but focus in on primarily on the Sat aspect of us. The second 5 chapters focus in on the Chit aspects of each one of us. And the last 5 chapters, which we are now taking up, focuses on the Ananda aspect of us. So essentially, each living being, and here we are talking about human beings, is characterized by these 3 aspects of our life. So just a couple of minutes just talking about those 3 aspects before we go further. So take Sat for example. What does that really mean? Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So Satyam and Sat are pretty much the same thing. So what does that mean? What is Sat? So Sat has various meanings that we can approach the same thing. It's not as though they are different meanings, it's the same thing, but we can approach it from different ways. So for example, Sat means one which is Sat Swarupaha. So this is one aspect of approaching the word Sat. That the Sat meaning one which is Sat Swarupaha. So Swarupaha means that the very nature of which Vastu means the one entity. So I don't like to translate it as a thing, because it is not a inert thing. When you say a thing, that means inert. What a Vastu means an entity. So an entity which is the Swarupa of which is Sat. It's not the Swabhava, it's not the personality. There you can even say the personality can also be Sat. So for example, if there is a person who always speaks the truth, doesn't veer from it, that means that the Swabhava of that person is Sat. That means the personality of the person is Sat. You don't, you can never catch the person lying in any way, even exaggerating in any way. And I am so grateful that I think I inherited that from my dad. My dad was a very simple person. He was not very spiritual. He was a skeptic and so on, but there is something that characterized his character, his personality, that he was, whatever he would speak will be the truth. He was extremely uncomfortable that somebody would say, well, why don't you just say this? And he might have pressured by others, he might have spoken some exaggeration. I don't think ever a lie, but maybe some exaggeration. I don't even know that, but all I know is that he was a Sat Swabhava. So the Sat Swabhava is a personality. But a personality can also veer from it. So you can say that there are people who generally speak the truth, but once in a while they do veer from it. They stray from it. And so we have this curve where there are people who never ever speak a lie, and those who are very casual in speaking the truth, and the entire spectrum in between. So this is called Sat Swabhava. But distinguished from that is the Sat Swarupa. So the Sat Swarupa means it is not the personality, it is the person itself. This is what we have to really think about. This is what Vedanta teaches. Because our doubt is, how can a person be Sat? We can only think in terms of Swabhava, personality. But where does the personality dwell in? What is the container for it? The container for that is Sat Swarupaha. So the Sat means one which is, whose nature is nothing but truth. So this is one way of approaching the Sat. I think along with that aspect of this way of looking at the Sat, there is another very important, in fact even more important than the first one, which is something that we have to really think a lot about. It doesn't need to be thought much about, but because of our mistakes, we need to think about it. What is that, Sat? It means one that does not require a proof. Think about that. Sat Swarupa, the Sat, the person, is one that does not require justification. You cannot say, are you Sat or not? Just think about that. This is very key. Let's see how. Let me ask you a question. How do you know you are there? So, all aspects of personality require a proof. All aspects. One aspect of the personality is that we are born from a seed of life and then we flower into a personality. So that is a body. And also the subtle body, that's the gross body. Also the subtle body, which is the mind. And all the aspects of it. So we become just in the last hour or so, my granddaughter was visiting. They actually left. I was thinking I could just show her to you. But how she has now flowered into a talking, active person that she was not. She was just a little baby just lying there. And so there is a flowering of this personality. Now, you can ask a person, when did you get this personality? For example, one of the aspects of the personality is, how old are you? So, that question is valid. Valid in the sense that it requires an answer. So it has to be proven. It requires a proof. Somebody has to say that this baby was born on such and such day. It requires a proof. And who is the mother of this baby? Requires a proof. Who is the father of the baby? Requires a proof. All aspects of her require a proof. The health of the baby, have you had vaccinations or not? Health of the person requires a proof. Yes, there has to be some certificate to say, yes, she has been vaccinated for smallpox and all those other diseases and so on and so forth. All require certain proof. But I ask you, is your existence as a person require a proof or not? It is a ridiculous question to ask someone, are you there? By the way, you can actually ask a person, this is a ridiculous question also, are you alive or not? It's really not that ridiculous, because if a person is just lying, and this is what happens to people who have had a stroke or who were in a semi-coma. And in fact, in some cases, the doctors, if there's a person who is almost ready to leave their life, they feel the pulse and the pulse is very, very faint. Well, the first thing that the people ask is, can you recognize me? Can you talk? Are you alive? So even the fact that I am alive requires a proof. No question about that. So the doctor can also say that yes, this person is still alive, So somebody has to say, is he still alive? And say, yes, he's still alive. Requires a proof. But I am just talking about a living person. Does it make any sense to ask a question, are you there? Not alive. Alive comes later. But are you there? Who are you? Are you? You never ask yourself, am I? You can ask yourself, what am I? This is where the personality gets lumped in with the person. But if you don't forget about the personality, if you just talk about, am I there or not? So this is an important thing. The Atma doesn't need to be proven. Why? Because it is already there. Now what happens is that I don't understand the true nature of the Atma. Aham Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swarupoham Sat Swarupoham. This I don't know because I lump in, I never separate the fact that I am from what I am. Because you always say, this is what happens. You ask to describe someone. Say, please, this is what we do sometimes in the classes when we got together in person. And by the way, just to talk about it, I think it's about time that we did that again. So I'm planning sometime in January, we will have a in-person get-together, just like we did about 5-6 months ago. We need to do that from time to time. So, but in those get-togethers, if we ask people, please introduce yourself, what will you say? You can't just say, I am. So there, if you say, I am, we'll say, good. I am too, you are also, that's good, okay. But you don't stop there. You'll say, I am 42 years of age, born in Karnataka, and I came, then you have a long history that you put in on top of that. So this is the situation. All those are sat swabhavas, but the sat swarupa does not require a proof. It is just meaningful. You cannot go to a doctor and say, doctor said, why are you here? This is what happens. You go to, these days of course, the nurses first come. So now they have all these assistant physicians and nurses who are very smart people actually. I've learned to not take them for granted. I actually spend a lot of time befriending them so that if I have to get a follow-on appointment or something, I can call up. I've had a cardiologist for the last 22 years, ever since I had a heart attack. And her nurse, it's a she, and her nurse has been with her for 22 years. She's a Russian lady, and I know her so well. Whenever I have some kind of an issue, medication, new medication, or some tests, or some problems or something, I don't even have to talk to the doctor. I just talk to Yelena, and she knows me very well, and so most of our relationship is with them. But anyway, just going back to it, can you imagine going to a doctor and the nurse comes in and says, yes, Mr. Kapoor, what are you here for? So what you have to say is, I'm having some pains and or some stomach ache or something. Something you have to give, some reason. Supposing you say, I want to know if I am or not. All these nurses will give you a smile and say, no, seriously. What are you here for? And you say, no, that's all I want to know. I need a proof, am I here or not? So she would say, I'll be right back. She'll go outside and talk to her staff people and say, oh my gosh, we have a interesting person in there. He's in the wrong spot. He needs to go to a mental hospital. It wouldn't make any sense at all. So this is an important thing. The Sat Swarupa does not require a proof. Everything else requires a proof, including the fact that I am not my personality. I am independent of the personality. I just am. So this is called Sat. And so this aspect of Sat is covered in great detail in the first 5 chapters. Okay? So now comes Chit. So this is an interesting thing to see. You cannot establish the Sat without a Chit. Chit means one who is Chaitanya Swarupaha, not only Sat Swarupaha, but Chit Swarupaha. Chit means knowledge, awareness. All these are English words are not adequate to describe. Chit Swarupaha means the very jnanam, the very awareness, and of awarefulness. So the Sat requires awarefulness to know that you are there. Here Swami Akhandananda had given a very beautiful example. He said, suppose you were recuperating from some surgery and you were given a general anesthesia. Or even forget about a general anesthesia. Supposing you went to a dentist even, and the dentist, this was a serious dental issue, and they had to completely numb your mouth, your teeth, your lips, and even your tongue, because there might have been some cutting and so on and so forth. So they had to put some local anesthesia to numb your tongue. So now, suppose you say, can I have some ice cream, please? Normally you don't eat ice cream, but supposing you ask for ice cream and they say, okay, all right, here's the ice cream. Swamiji says that supposing the ice cream is given to you, but your tongue is numb, will you even be aware of the ice cream? You may see it, but it won't touch your tongue. And if it touches your tongue, the tongue has gone to sleep. It cannot know it. So, knowing something is important to prove the existence of it. So here it's a very funny thing. You have awareness, you have Sat Swarupam, but you have no awareness of it. Is that not possible? In fact, you know what? This is exactly what happens in the deep sleep. In deep sleep, you are Sat Swarupaha alone. You have no personality. You are only the person. You are just the entity. But you are covered by ignorance. Completely covered by ignorance. Just like you have been numbed. There is a kind of anesthesia to your mind. And if that happens, you are not aware of the fact that you are sleeping pleasantly. You don't know that. Only when you get up, there is a memory of the experience. But during this sleep, deep sleep, you are not aware of the fact that you are Sat Swarupa. So therefore, Sat and Chit both are important. Without Chit, there is no Sat. And without Sat, there is no Chit. Then the final thing is Ananda. So I mean, in this example, supposing your tongue is now no longer numb, and you can actually taste something, and then you say, "Can you give me something?" And supposing what is given to you is a very bitter medicine, in one of those Ayurvedic kashayas, very, very bitter. Will you enjoy it? No. You would rather say, let my tongue be numbed. You can ask the nurse, why didn't you give me this kashaya while my tongue was numb so I didn't have to feel the bitterness of it? So the self also is not only Sat Swarupa, Chit Swarupa, but also Ananda Swarupa. And this Ananda Swarupa is the one that we are studying in the last 5 chapters. How is it that it is the Ananda? So this is some special problem, because if you have something which is very bitter, then your normal tongue will be able to determine whether it is good or bad, whether you like it or not. But here, it is not clear to you. You are Sat Swarupa. You see, this is a part of the problem. It's also part of the problem, which is true for really the whole problem is the similar. You don't know you are Sat Swarupa. And you don't know that you are Chit Swarupa. And because you don't know you are Sat Swarupa, what do you mean by I don't know if I'm Sat Swarupa? Because realistically, if we ask somebody, who are you? They will say, I'm 42 years of age, and my parents both died young. They were in their 70s, and I think my lifespan may be in the same 70, 80. So I have another 35, 40 years to live. So I am not Sat Swarupa. And so you don't know that you are Sat Swarupa because you take yourself to be mortal, not immortal, right? And because you take yourself, you don't know that you are Sat Swarupa. And also you don't know that you are Chit Swarupa. Now what does that mean? That means you ask yourself, are you knowledgeable or are you ignorant? And you will say, I'm knowledgeable about something and I'm ignorant about a lot of things. That's exactly what happens. We know 1 or 2 languages. If a person knows more than 2 languages, they will say, wow, that is amazing. So 1 or 2 languages, some basic facts about life, but there is so much that I don't know. In fact, the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know. So I am not Chit Swarupa. I have some knowledge and some ignorance. I am a mixture of those two. It's not true. It's not true because just like you are Sat Swarupa, you are basically knowledge Swarupa. You are the Swarupa of Chit, Jnana Swarupa. Because as you know very well, you can just see this from your own experience, that If you ask somebody, did you know certain languages? You will say, no, I don't know. You cannot say, I don't know, unless you know that you don't know. So overall, you know. Is there anything that you don't know? Now, is there any situation where your awareness goes away? No. I know what I know what I don't know, therefore I know. Over and beyond all these secondary things of what I know, as a specialty, as in general, I know. So you don't know that you are Chit Swarupaha. So you didn't know that you are Sat Swarupaha. You didn't know that you are Chit Swarupaha. Therefore you don't know you are Ananda Swarupaha. This is the situation. It is not surprising that you don't know that you are Ananda Swarupaha. So now, this is the topic of the last 5 chapters of the Pancadasi, which is Ananda Swarupaha. So, in the last 5 chapters, we saw the topic heads, okay, which is so there we said the name of the 5 chapters is a very peculiar naming of just these 5 chapters. That doesn't happen in the first 10 chapters, but in the last 5, it is an aspect of Brahmananda. Brahmananda means Ananda Swarupaha, not Ananda Swabhavaha, but Ananda Swarupaha. I am the nature of joy, which I don't know. You ask somebody, are you the nature of joy? He said, no. I occasionally get some happiness, but generally speaking, I am not very happy. Did you know that your nature is that of Ananda? He says, what are you talking about? How can that be? This is what is called Brahmananda, means Ananda Swarupaha. So in the analysis of the Ananda Swarupa, analysis means that there is something, some problem here that one doesn't know that I am the Ananda Swarupa. So let us now reveal to you why you are the Ananda Swarupa. It is exactly like the 10th man example, that I didn't know that I am itself the 10th person, and so somebody has to reveal that to me by providing the right kind of conditions, by asking all the 9 other boys to stand in a line and count properly, and then you say, you forgot to count yourself. So even though he was the 10th man, 10th boy, he didn't know he was the 10th boy. And as a result, he was in great misery. Similar situation to us. I am Ananda Swarupaha, but I don't know that I am the Ananda Swarupaha. So this has to be unfolded and revealed very clearly. And the nature is that I am so convinced that I am not the Ananda Swarupaha that I just sit there like this. What? You must be kidding. Are you sure? Why are you telling me this? Do you want some money from me? You need some funds? He said, no, I don't need any funds. I'm just telling you I happen to know that we are covered by this ignorance, and let me reveal to you that you are the Ananda Swarupa. So he says, what is it going to take? Well, I don't know, but based on all of your firm convictions that you are not the Ananda Swarupa, it's going to take a little while. So give me an opportunity. I'll try to reveal it to you. in 5 different sections. Okay, so now we are in the last 5 chapters. So in the last 5 chapters, Brahmananda here means Ananda Swarupaha. So there are 5 different sets of arguments that are given. And you are asked to really go through, if possible, each one of them and convince yourself where you are making the mistake. So there, the names of the last 5 chapters are in Brahmananda. First one, number 11, is Yogananda. So the name of the 5 chapters here is Brahmananda, in Brahmananda Yogananda Prakaranam. Then in the 12th chapter, which will begin today, is Brahmananda Atmananda Prakaranam. First one is Yogananda, second one is Atmananda, third one is Advaitananda, fourth one is Vidyananda, and the last one is Vishayananda. So these are 5 prakriyas. Prakriyas means they are methods to remove your doubts, your ignorance, your bhranti, your bhrama about yourself, the opposite understanding that you have. Viparyasa. Viparyasa means the opposite understanding. Agrahanam and anyatha grahanam. Not knowing or knowing it wrongly. Agrahanam means not grasping it properly. Anyatha grahanam means you grasp the wrong thing. Both is the same 2 aspects of the mistake. So the Yogananda, Atmananda, Advaitananda, Vidyananda and Vishayananda are 5 prakriyas, 5 methodologies for us to know that I am really Brahmananda. I am the Ananda Swarupaha. So in that now we had already covered the first of the 5 chapters, which is chapter 11, which is called Yogananda in the very top. Okay. So the Yogananda means, what did we do? We'll just a very quick summary of what we have already done. So in the 11th chapter, it was pointed out that your Atma Swarupaha is covered up through your ignorance. Covered up by my ignorance? What does that really mean? How can it be covered up with my own ignorance? Yes. Just like the 10th man will say, how can I not know I am the 10th person? That I am the solution to the problem that I am seeking. So this person can say, I don't know. You somehow missed it. That's it. There's no other reason for it. That is the nature of ignorance. You cannot say why. Like for example, I can have somebody come here and say, this is my. So supposing there's a lady that comes in, and I will introduce her to say, this is my sister, Kanaklata. That's her name. And you'll say, oh, I didn't know you had a sister. And I'll say, yes, she is my sister. Now I ask you, how come you didn't know that she is my sister? You're going to just shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know. That's the nature of I don't know. Then I start cross-examining you. Then you're getting more and more irritated as I do. When did you not know that she's my sister? When did it start? You say, why are you asking me all this? Isn't it obvious? I didn't know. We can ask about what you knew and when did you know it. But the ignorance itself has no beginning. It's like a blanket that just comes and covers it up without your knowledge until it is revealed. So therefore, I didn't know that I am the Swarupananda, Atma Swarupa, Ananda Swarupa. I didn't know that. So then the question is, if I'm covering it up, how do I uncover it? So in Yogananda, in the 11th chapter, we went through a very detailed study of how your mind needs to be purified with the help of ekagrata, single-minded focus, then vairagya, through viveka, and slowly, by understanding that your nature, if you don't have some desire for other things, manifests itself as your own Ananda Swarupa. So we went through this in great detail, that normally speaking, a person knows that there are some sources of happiness. There are some methods for happiness. If you're really unhappy for a while, you can do some exercise to forget about your troubles. You're working out and your endorphins come out. Or you can eat some ice cream. Or usually we meet friends who assure us that really life is like that. It's okay, it'll get better, don't worry about it. So some friendship. All those kinds of things I know about. Good food, music, entertainment, etc., are sources of my happiness. But I myself am one of the sources, not in fact ultimately the only source of happiness. But forget about the ultimate source of happiness. Even one source of happiness, amongst my many different things that I am aware of. I can do this, I can do that, I can rest, I can watch television, I can go for a walk, eat some ice cream, eat some chips and salsa, whatever those kinds of things I do. But one of them is just being myself. This I don't know. In fact, I get really bored with just by myself. I need to be doing something. So I don't even know that I am one of the many multiple sources of joy. Vedanta says that is what you have to discover. So, in fact, this is what the Vedanta points out, our Shastras point out, that admit to the possibility by trying it. Try it. Just think about yourself as a complete person. And usually you're not going to still with it because you're not used to doing it. But if you keep at it, and this is exactly what is talked about in terms of discovering Ishvara in your life, discovering God in your life. So, Swami Akhandananda ji, in reading his books, he says, There are lots of very beautiful books that he has written. One where he has a satsang. He has a satsang where questions from the audience are given to him, and then he replies on them elaborately for one of them. So the normal question is, how do I experience God? What do I have to do to discover God in my life? Very normal question. So Swamiji says that, listen, do you ever give a time for God? Do you ever give time to God? Do you ever ask for an appointment? So the person says, no, but I don't know who to give the appointment to. How do I give an appointment to? I don't even know what that means. So Swamiji spends a lot of time saying, how often do you go to temple to pray? Do you have a temple at home? When the sun comes up in the morning, do you recognize how important that is? Isn't that not an aspect of God? Oh, that is just the sun. And as far as temples go, yes, I go in Diwali time and so on and so forth. And as far as temple at home, I don't really have much time because I have to go to the office in the morning, and then I'm tired when I come back, and then my children are asking for food, and so I have then the time to go to sleep. I have to watch some television and do some you have to look at Facebook and catch up with friends. I don't have much time with God. And Swamiji says, okay, then that's fine, I understand, but and don't complain that you don't have any recognition of God and so on, because you have to provide the time. Ishvara is waiting for you to introduce you to, but you don't give any opportunity. And so do you do any chanting, especially Vedic chanting? No, I've been thinking about it, but I don't know who to learn the chanting from. So there you go. It is postponement, it is carelessness, it is not time, whatever it is. How are you going to have that happen? Then he says, do you at least give thanks to God? So you say, thanks for what? What has he done for me? There we go again. Who takes care of your breathing? Is your mother? She's already given you birth, and that's it. Now you're on your own. Who is supporting you? The blood, with the blood flow, with the oxygen supply, with your heart beating. Oh, I don't, that just happens normally. Is God involved with any of that? Yes, my dear. Have you ever given 2 minutes of thanks, of some recognition about the support that you're getting? Have you turned to it with a small chant, with a prayer? Have you gone to a pilgrimage stand? How much time do you give? Nothing. And how much time do you give for all these trivial things that you're doing? Maybe out of the 24 hours, 23 hours and 50 minutes, 10 minutes you may think about it. So this is where the vairagya, this is where the abhyasa, this is where the single-mindedness has to be done. This is where, and we'll talk a lot more about the raga dvesha and all of those kinds of things. There's some very beautiful things to talk about. But the sum total of all this is that you are just focused on something which is not Paramatma. And the Paramatma is really your own your Jivatma is the Paramatma. So until you begin to turn and give some space to understanding the Atma, Paramatma, Ishvara, all the same. Paramatma is not separate from you. It is in fact flowing through you as you. Sat Swarupaha, Chit Swarupaha and Ananda Swarupaha. Until you begin to turn to it, it remains undiscovered. So, the thing to do is to understand, to look at how the Ananda, the sense of joy, is emanating from yourself. And if you are not distracted, you are one with it. This is what happens in deep sleep. You are not distracted. There is no separate personality. There is nothing to take you away from it. So if you don't, if you're not involved with not being yourself, you become one with Ishvara. You are the Ishvara. This is why it is called Prajnaha in the Mandukya Upanishad. In the deep sleep state is called Prajnaha. Prajnaha is Prakarshena Agyaha. Means that I am totally involved with nothing. There is no projection. And that projection is Ananda. I'm sorry, the lack of projection is Ananda. So we went through in the 11th chapter that form a base from where to look at the experience of Yogananda. Look at the base of deep sleep. Are you not Ananda? So you will agree that yes, deep sleep is Ananda. Then extend it both forward and backwards. Forward is even the approach of deep sleep gives you Ananda, because your mind anticipates it and fluffs up the pillow. Make sure that the blanket is covered nicely. Your bed is covered with a blanket and you're very comfortable. And you slip into pajamas, not into pants and belts and so on. Is something very soft, because you are preparing for it. And then coming out of it for a while, you have Vasanananda, because then you have a wake, W-A-K-E, wake. Just like you have something that moves in the water and it leaves a wake behind. So similarly, in the deep sleep state, that state is over, but it leaves a little bit of vasana in the end, until you get involved with, oh my God, today is Tuesday morning, I have to do this, I have to do that. You cover it yourself again. But in doing so, be aware of the nature of Ananda. Where is it coming from? And even when you are eating ice cream, as we saw in the examples, where does the Ananda occur? Is it outside of me or is it me? Does it not come back to yourself? So keep doing all of that and accumulating it. And then slowly, as towards the end of the chapter 11, we said, okay, I can understand that Sushupti, deep sleep, is Ananda. But then why is the waking state not Ananda? What do I need to do to turn the waking state also into Ananda? So we went through a lot of steps in doing so. But ultimately, what it amounted was a thorough analysis, experiential analysis, and slowly not only an analysis but the living of one's life through vairagya, by giving more space to yourself rather than to other things, you slowly discover that not only is the self one of the sources of Ananda, ultimately it becomes the only source of Ananda. And so then there were some aspects of that. One of the aspects of that was this definition of Nijananda. Remember, we went through Nijananda. So in the subset of Yogananda, there were some things that were talked about, like for example, Vasanananda we just went through, after you wake up. We even Vishayananda, because the Ananda that you have from experiences, how your own Ananda bounces itself off, and it appears that it has gone outside, but in fact it is always with you. So that was the Vishayananda. And then there was a talk about Nijananda. So Nijananda is a very interesting concept. Nijananda means your own personal Ananda. Nija means personal, mine, called Nija. Nijaswarupaha. So Nijananda means my personal Ananda. It's very obvious that everybody has their own personal Ananda. This is very interesting that there is a single Ananda for everyone. But depending upon one's mental makeup, one's background, one's prarabdha karma, depending upon a number of things, our Anandas are all different. It is very well known that even as, identical twins, if you follow their lives, they are not equally happy. Somebody would be less, somebody would be more. Even in a family, even if you are not twins, you find even though they are all born out of the same child from mother and father, they have different aspects of it. Sometimes the child can become criminal. And the other brothers and sisters say, we don't know what happened. Criminality means you are very unhappy. Others so everybody has a different personalized form of the same Ananda. This is called Nijananda. And a understanding of Nijananda, that it all arises out of a common Ananda Swarupa by varying degrees of covering, is called Nijananda. One can visualize this, that suppose you have sun shining So let's say you are in a hotel and the hotel has, 50 rooms facing the east, and the sun is now shining. At 9 o'clock in the morning, it is up on the horizon, there is a lot of light, lot of heat, and so on. But if you look at individually in each of the hotel rooms, somebody has the window open, somebody has it completely closed with drapes, somebody has a little bit of light coming in. They are all different lights inside the room. Even though the outside light is exactly the same, but the transformation of the outside light into something which is a personal light inside their rooms are all different. So this is what is called Nijananda. So we took some time to analyze that and all that. And so this is what was called Yogananda in the 11th chapter. Okay? So now we come to the 12th chapter. And the reason for the 12th chapter is that suppose one feels, so this is very difficult for me to achieve. To purify my mind and do vairagya and abhyasa and slowly going through the steps of yoga and this Yogananda and so on, it just seems very difficult. I'm not sure that I can really grasp all of that. And so, what about me? For a person who feels that this is just too hard, I cannot grasp it. This is just too much. It's too difficult for me to really understand all. No, I can understand it, but I can't do it. I have to accomplish a lot, and I'm not capable of doing that. What about my case? What happens to me? So the 12th chapter that we are going to begin, and we won't take all the verses, I just want to give you the overall feeling for it, is meant for such people who feel that they are incapable of grasping all the fine points of Yogananda and Nijananda and Vasanananda and all of those kinds of things. I don't know if I can do that. Just give me something. How do I get even started? This is a primer for the relatively unprepared mind, where the author itself characterizes such a mind as mudha. Mudha means dull-witted, not very capable. And we can all relate to that. As far as the spiritual aspect of that is concerned, we can also say, yep, that's me. I don't really get everything. So, so on this very first verse of the 12th chapter, it starts with this. This is on this Hindi book on page number 1289, the start of the 12th chapter. Excuse me. So it says, Nanu evam vasananandat brahmanandat api itaram Vetu yogi nijanandam mudhasya atra asti kagati. So if you want to do this in a verse form, Nanvevam vasananandat brahmanandadapitaram vetu yogi nijanandam mudhasyatrasti kagatihi. So he says, wait a minute, Nanu means I have a problem. I can understand through Vasanananda, Brahmananda, you've talked about all of that. And then Yogi, the Nijanandam, you got all of that and so on. But Mudhasya atra kagati asti. What about me who was incapable of getting it? So this is the question, the very first this is how these chapters are connected. You have to do all of that. So here in describing the state of the mudhaha, a person who is incapable, Swami Vidyaranya describes it, and it says that that is a normal person, not very spiritually evolved, because they may have some sense of the existence of God, but they don't know how to go about it. They don't know what to do, where Ishvara is. They don't have any gati towards it. There is no direction towards the attainment of God. They are happy, not happy, but they are involved in the daily life, and that's all they are doing. So this is the normal person. Okay? And so what this is characterized is called parangmukhaha. Parangmukhaha means that your mind, if you examine yourself from the morning through evening, you're just involved with some specific vyavahara, some specific transaction, sukha dukkha, and regrets, hopes, likes, disappointments. This is exactly what we're doing the whole day. And we are not really capable of understanding, is there something which is free of all that? Leave aside my own self. But is there some other thing that I can go whose solace allows me to be free from all the samsara? I'm not able to do that. I don't know what to do. This is the normal person, and this is what is called a mudhaha. See, because in the 11th chapter, you have a person described who has now become, this is what is called jigyasu. So jigyasu means the gyatumichuhu. You really want to know how this whole thing works. I think I have told a lot of people, and including yourself many times, that the reason that I decided to give up my job and live in the ashram with Swamiji was because of Swamiji convincing me that this can be learnt very systematically. And I didn't want to get rid of that opportunity. I can just cite a couple of other people. Here's this peculiar thing how that one does. I have a friend who he lives in this area himself. and who was actually my senior. Senior in the sense that he had spent some time with Swami Dayananda on an earlier course in Powai in Bombay, and was a very good student, and he has now settled in this area, and everybody really respected him as a serious student, a very erudite person, and so on. But something very funny happened. The reason is that he had a PhD in biochemistry, or I forget the exact field that he was in. And he was very well received where he was, so on and so forth. But then he took to Vedanta by following Swamiji like I did for a couple of years. And then after that, when he came back, Swamiji asked him, what would you like to do now? And in fact, the same thing happened with Swami Viditatmananda. Viditatmananda ji was also a very accomplished engineer after his master's degree in New York, and he went to 2 years with Swamiji, and Swamiji asked him at the end of that 2 years, what would you like to do? And he says, Swamiji, I have no idea. I just want to study and teach Vedanta. So you tell me what you want me to do. So he was asked to go to Ahmedabad and become a brahmachari for a while, and then he has flowered into such an accomplished Swami. Now we all know that. And so this other gentleman also graduated about the same time, and Swamiji asked him, what would you like to do? And he says, Swamiji, I have a PhD in science, and I have a lot to accomplish. I want a lot to learn, and I want to go back to it. Swamiji thought, this is kind of whatever, if you want to do it, but it's up to you. That person never really became a devoted to, he's devoted, he's still a very wonderful person and so on, but his life became like of just a simple householder. He got married, and he's not a teacher, he's not in touch with the Vedanta to the extent that one should be, and I think he has spoiled his life. But in my case, what happened was that I was not that accomplished an engineer. I was a simple engineer. I used to make a good living and so on. But when I met Swami Dayananda ji, he said this can be learnt. To become a jigyasu. And when I got into it, this was much more fulfilling for me than any other job that I was doing. So there was no point in my going back to it, although I came back for 18 years after that. But that was only to make a living out of it so that my family can also survive and I can also survive. My mind was not on it. This is really the thing that really captured me. In that sense, I'm much more fortunate that I didn't have PhDs and I didn't have intellectual pursuits that were very attractive to me compared to Vedanta. So in that sense, I'm very indebted to Ishvara for giving me that kind of an opportunity. Anyway, so going back to this, this is the normal person who has, this is what is called mudha, parang mukha. You're still involved with all the things, science and PhDs and here and there and so on, and you are undiscovering, you have not discovered something much more important about yourself. How to do so? From that mudha standpoint, The question is, what about me? I am incapable of doing yoga abhyasa and Vasanananda and Vishayananda and all those kinds of things. I can't do it, but then is there something for me? What do I do? So the chapter 12 says yes. Let me tell you, a simpler way to approach the source of Ananda. And so this is what chapter 12 will be all about, and we will start on that hopefully next week. So with that, I close the class today. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So nice to see you all. Wonderful. It's been a while. Missed the teaching. Hope you all had a good holiday. But we are ready to go back to work. And so nice to see you all this. So wonderful. We'll continue on this. I don't have any questions that I can answer for you. But good to see you all. See you next